ॐ शन्नो मित्रः शं वरुणः शन्नो भवत्वर्यमा शन्न इन्द्रो बृहस्पतिः शन्नो विष्णुरुक्रमः नमो ब्रह्मणे नमस्ते वायो त्वमेव प्रत्यक्षं ब्रह्मासि त्वमेव प्रत्यक्षं ब्रह्म वदिष्यामि ऋतं वदिष्यामि सत्यं वदिष्यामि तन्मामवतु तद्वक्तारमवतु अवतु माम् अवतु वक्तारम् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः यश्छन्दसा मृषभो विश्वरूपः छन्दोभ्योऽध्यमृतात् सम्बभूव समेन्द्रो मेधया आस्पृणोतु अमृतस्य देवधारणो भूयासं शरीरं मे विचर्षणं जिह्वा मे मधुमत्तमा कर्णाभ्यां भूरिविश्रुवं ब्रह्मणः कोशोऽसि मेधया पिहितः श्रुतं मे गोपाय ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः अहं वृक्षस्य रेरिवा कीर्तिः पृष्ठं गिरेरिव ऊर्ध्वपवित्रो वाजिनीव स्वमृतमस्मि द्रविणगुंसवर्चसं सुमेधा अमृतोक्षितः इति शङ्कोर्वेदानुवचनम् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः आप्यायन्तु मम अङ्गानि वाक्प्राणश्चक्षुः श्रोत्रमथो बलमिन्द्रियाणि च सर्वाणि सर्वं ब्रह्मोपनिषदं माहं ब्रह्म निराकुर्यां मा ब्रह्म निराकरोत् अनिराकरणमस्तु अनिराकरणं मे अस्तु तदात्मनि निरतेय उपनिषत्सु धर्माः ते मयि सन्तु ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः वाङ् मे मनसि प्रतिष्ठिता मनो मे वाचि प्रतिष्ठितम् आविराविर्म एधि वेदस्य म आनीस्थः श्रुतं मे मा प्रहासीः अनेनादितेन अहोरात्रान् सन्दधामि ऋतं वदिष्यामि सत्यं वदिष्यामि तन्मामवतु तद्वक्तारमवतु अवतु माम् अवतु वक्तारमवतु वक्तारम् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः भद्रं नो अपि वातयमनः ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः भद्रं कर्णेभिः शृणुयाम देवाः भद्रं पश्येम अक्षभिर्यजत्राः स्थिरैरङ्गैस्तुष्टुवागुंसस्तनूभिः व्यशेम देवहितं यदायुः स्वस्ति न इन्द्रो वृद्धश्रवाः स्वस्ति नः पूषा विश्ववेदाः स्वस्ति नस्तार्क्ष्यो अरिष्टनेमिः स्वस्ति नो बृहस्पतिर्दधातु ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः यो ब्रह्माणं विदधाति पूर्वं यो वै वेदांश्च प्रहिणोति तस्मै तगुंहदेवमात्मबुद्धिप्रकाशं मुमुक्षुर्वै शरणमहं प्रपद्ये। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पाद शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं। शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः। नारायणं पद्मभुवं वसिष्ठं शक्तिं च तत्पुत्रपराशरं च व्यासं शुकं गौडपदं महान्तं गोविन्दयोगीन्द्रमथास्य शिष्यं श्रीशङ्कराचार्यमथास्य पद्मपादं च हस्तामलकं च शिष्यं तं तोटकं वार्तिककारमन्यान्गस्मद्गुरून् सन्ततमानतोऽस्मि। ॐ विश्वं दर्पणदृश्यमाननगरी तुल्यं निजान्तर्गतं पश्यन्नात्मनि मायया बहिर्भूतं यथा निद्रया। यत्साक्षात् कुरुते प्रबोधसमये स्वात्मानमेवाद्वयं तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः। श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये बीजस्यान्तरिवाङ्कुरो जगदिदं प्राङ्निर्विकल्पं पुनः मायाकल्पितदेशकालकलना वैचित्र्यचित्रीकृतं मायावीव विजृम्भयत्यपि महायोगी वयस्वेच्छया तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः। श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये यस्यैव स्फुरणं सदात्मकम् असत्कल्पार्थकं भासते साक्षात् तत्त्वमसीति वेदवचसा यो बोधयत्याश्रितान्। यत्साक्षात् करणात् भवेन्न पुनरावृत्तिर्भवाम्भोनिधौ तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः। श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये नानाच्छिद्रघटोदरस्थितमहादीपप्रभाभास्वरं ज्ञानं यस्य तु चक्षुरादिकरणद्वारा बहिस्पन्दते जानामीति तमेव भान्तमनुभात्येतत्समस्तं जगत् तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः। श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये देहं प्राणमपीन्द्रियानपि चलां बुद्धिं च शून्यं विदुः स्त्रीबालान्दजडोपमास्त्वमिति भ्रान्ताभृशं वादिनः। मायाशक्तिविलासकल्पितमहाव्यामोहसंहारिणे तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः। श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये Okay, so let us proceed along the discussion on the Adhyasa Bhashya by Adi Shri Shankaracharya ji. So the way we are approaching this, as you know, is that we are looking at the topic at hand through the analytical eyes of Swami Paramarthananda ji, who has really summarized the essence, the conceptual essence of that topic. So here in the Adhyasa Bhashya, he has summarized the details of the Bhashya in terms of certain conceptual points. So we have done all of that. And I think we will continue to follow that methodology as we go forward. because I think it's a very good one. Swami Paramarthananda ji has put a lot of effort in arranging the concepts that are easier for us to understand. Then what we will do most of the time, maybe perhaps not all the time, is to back up that conceptual analysis with a line by line, if not word for word, translation of the Shankara Bhashya. And I wanted to do that for the sake of some of the more experienced students, and especially those that know Sanskritam. And it might be good to do as a backup, but this is a backup. It's kind of like a fill-in. The main concept discussion has already taken place, and now this is a kind of a confirmation, if you may. And so when you read the Bhashya, you will say, yes, those are the concepts. So this is what we're going to do. So as you know that we have already done the conceptual aspect of the Adhyasa Bhashya. And so if I go back to should have really done this ahead of time so I don't waste your time. So just very quickly, just as a reminder, we have done all of this in the last few classes, that the way Adi Shankara is tackling this Adhyasa Bhashya, one thing we might do is just to look, even before we do that, we need to keep in mind that our entire lives are in the form of a play designed by Ishvara. So let's just look at it from that perspective for a minute, and then we'll come back to the exact analysis of all of this. So this should be kept in mind, that really speaking, Ishvara is one person. And so there is a play, a shrishti, a leela, if you may, which is possible by introducing a kind of a pretend life. You know, just like any other play. So just like when the human beings also design some kind of a movie or a play, it's a pretend play. And it looks very real because if you want the pretend play to be credible and enjoyable, you better do a good job of it. It should be done that way. So even though it looks very real, this is why if you go to a movie which is very well done, then it evokes the same emotions as it would in real life. And so this is exactly what the situation is. This is a very sophisticated play designed by Ishvara. So it's a play. It's a pretend play. So part of the pretend play, actually the very nature of the pretend play is that there is something which should not be taken seriously. It is really meant for both the losses and winnings. You know, this is the thing, both losses have to be, you cannot just have a play where it is only winnings. What kind of this is where the sporting examples are very useful. You cannot have just like yesterday, there was a basketball game between Washington Wizards and San Francisco, our San Francisco team, and it was a very close game last night, from what I heard later on, and the Warriors lost that game at the last minute. They were just a couple of seconds one way or the other. So if you look at the commentary from the Warrior standpoint, which I did this morning, I was just before the class, I was just going through the news last night, and it was very heartbreaking. They were ahead by 3 points with 10 seconds to go and they lost it. Now, if you had the commentary from the Washington people, DC people, they would say, wow, what a victory it was. So a credible play, an NBA game where people spend lots of money to see, is only credible. This is the point. If there are both gains and losses, if there's only gains, you cannot have a play. It has to be both ways. This being the case, we need to look at the entire life. And we have a hard time even starting to look at it. We say, no, how can this be play? No, it's not. But so another way of looking at that it's a play is that there is an error involved. There is an error involved. Error, what is the error? The error is that if you take it to be really real seriously, really real means real, up to the very end, then I'm sorry, you did not get the... This is what happens in our sporting events and so on and so forth. After the two of them are fighting and injuring each other and so on, when finally the whistle blows, they all hug each other and shake hands and say, well done. This is the spirit. But suppose there is some lingering animosity which can only come, it is not seen to be a play, then that's an error. That's an error. It should not be that way. It just means, just like, for example, supposing there are two kids that are playing, and they start crying because the other one snatched something away from them, or they hit them, or whatever it is. So it all starts out as a play, but then it gets so serious that the kids really start wailing and getting dejected, and there the parents have to step in and say, come on, it's okay, it was just a play, it just happened, no big deal, let's just go. So this is really the essence of Adhyasa Bhashya. Adi Shankara and Adi Shankara's contributions in reviving the structural view of what life is all about from a Vedantic standpoint is highly regarded in the history of Vedanta, because it's not as though it is not as though he came up with something new. Nothing is really is new. Nothing is new. It has all been done by the Ishvara from the very beginning in the Vedas. So even in the case of all the Maharshis, it is simply an editing of what the word is already there. So Adi Shankara basically, I think he did a great contribution. He made a great contribution to the Vedic thinking by whenever I see some sound from my phone, I always look to make sure that everything is okay. So pardon my interruption. So Adi Shankara basically made a great contribution, because it was already well known. It's not as though it's not, but to condense it in a form where you say, hey fellows, don't forget that the entire structure of our life is based on an error. In other words, the whole thing is nothing but a play. That's what it really means. Adhyasa Bhashya means the whole thing is a play. And the sooner you understand that, the sooner the smile in your face will become permanent. That's the whole thing. So this is the real essence of Adhyasa Bhashya. He says that all life, the entire transactions, so this is Adhyasa means that it's an error. It means that there is some difficulty in understanding that this is really not the reality. That's what Adhyasa means. So this is the Adhyasa Bhashya as a beginning of the Bhashya to the entire Brahma Sutra. Start with saying, wait. Before we get into all the arguments and analysis and functions and all of that in the Brahma Sutra, all 555 sutras, I just want to make one thing very clear. The whole thing is an error. And you better please understand that. This is the basis of it. Anyway, so this should be seen to be what the Adhyasa Bhashya is all about. So now we can come back to it. We have already done the conceptual analysis of the Adhyasa Bhashya. I'm just reminding you that we did this, that there were 6 segments. One was Adhyasa Shanka, where others can argue. And by the way, the others can be divided into one of 2 classes. When you say others, Shanka means a doubt. So the others can be divided into one of 2 classes. One is people like you and me who really who have a Shraddha towards understanding what is going on, but we have doubts about it. So exactly the students, whenever you come back to the same class, and I'm really nice that you are following my classes, so you have some Shraddha that this fellow is trying to give me something which seems to make sense, but it doesn't make sense to me at this moment. But you're not walking away, and you're not really blaming me. So this is one class. So this is what he calls Samvada. The other one is called Vivada, where people will say, what are you talking about? This is absolutely ridiculous. Doesn't make any sense. So you have no Shraddha towards the teaching. So both of them can be included in the others when you say others. Anyway, so here Adhyasa, the first point is Adhyasa Shanka. So it can be raised by other schools of thought. It can be either Vaidikas or Avaidikas. Could be anyone. But anyway, they're saying, are you sure that this is an Adhyasa? And so then the second point is Samadhanam. We have done all of this. I'm just revising this. The negation of the objection. Now, no, I understand your objection, but that objection doesn't make any sense because here's the reasons. This is Samadhanam. Then Adhyasa Lakshanam. So when you say Adhyasa, what do you mean by Adhyasa? What is the Lakshanam? So Lakshanam means a unique set of characteristics that distinguish it from any others. Like for example, when you say a cow, so there is a unique lakshana for the word cow, and the word cow comes from the Sanskritam gau. Okay, so it's not as though Sanskrit borrowed Gao from English because it outdates it a long time. So really cow means Gao. So the cow has a lakshana which is unique, that it has some udders and it has a certain shape. This is called lakshana, which uniquely distinguishes it from all other animals. It's called lakshana. So here adhyasa lakshana has to be given, and so we saw all of that. Smriti rupaha paratra purvadrishta abhyas avabhasaha adhyasaha or atasmin tadbuddhi. All of that we saw. Then the fourth point was sambhavana, that even the possibility of an error cannot come. And so that was a very good point, which I'll come to in a minute. That's really something to be kept in mind. Sambhavana. Then comes the adhyasa pramana. So we did all that, where we took arthapatti and we took anumana, and we distinguished the fact that the arthapatti is laukika arthapatti as well as shastrika arthapatti. The subjects are different. You cannot put one over the other, one in place of the other. And finally, the number 6 was upasamhara, conclusion. So this was all done. Now in terms of sambhavana, sambhavana means that that please, this is you are giving the whole life to be a adhyasa. That's not correct, because an adhyasa requires 4 things. And by the way, you're always talking about rope and snake and so on, and you're not extending that example into the real life. That's not proper. Why? Because then he gave the 4 ones. I'm just reminding you that first of all, there is a rope is a pratyaksha vishaya. It can be seen, and therefore it can be mistaken. You cannot mistake unless you take. And you cannot take Atma to be in front of you. So it doesn't apply. This is a wrong example of applying rope and snake into the Atma and Atma Viveka. That was number 1. Second one was that agyatatva, that it should not be known. But Atma is always known. I am, it's very obvious. You also say that it is self-known. So it doesn't apply. The third one was sadrishyam, that the snake and the rope should look alike to make a mistake. They should have some common elements. Atma and Anatma are completely different. You say that yourself, you say that, so it doesn't apply. And the fourth one was that there should be a vasana, a residue from the previous experiences of a snake that you can apply towards a rope. Also doesn't apply. So this was the sambhavana. Anyway, I'm going to stop here. I didn't want to make such a long revision, but all I wanted to say was that in the analysis of the Sanskrit sentences, this is just a confirmation of what has already been done. And we will follow this methodology even when we start the Brahma Sutra main sutras also, which we will, I think, start from next week. Today, hopefully, I finish, maybe not, but I will try to finish as much of the Adhyasa Bhashya as possible, so we can go to the first sutra next time. We will actually have a little bit more time today because we don't have the Drikdishya Viveka class after this. We just took a break, and we're going to start Bhagavad Gita chapter 8 from next week. So we might go another few minutes today itself, because there's no need to to terminate it right on time. Anyway, so now let us go to the exact bhashya, and we have already done 2 paragraphs of it. 2 paragraphs of it we have already done, and the second paragraph was, as you know, aha koyam adhyasa nameti, means aha kaha ayam adhyasa nama. What is this adhyasa that you keep talking about? Adhyasa, adhyasa, adhyasa. What is that? Uchyate. He says, okay, very happy that you asked. Let me tell you. Smriti rupaha paratra purva drishta avabhasaha. So this is the lakshana that we talked about again. Tam kechit anyatra anya dharmadhyasa hidi vadanti. And then he's asked to say that some say it this way, some say it that way. But whatever they say, it is really the same thing. Basically, it comes down to Smriti Rupaha Paratra Purva Drishta Avabhasa. This is the essence of this paragraph that was done. So he says, he ended up by this saying, so I might as well finish everything. Kechittu yatra yat adhyasaha tat viveka agrahana nibandhanaha brahma iti. Anyetu yatra yat adhyasaha tasya eva viparita dharmatva kalpanam achakshate. Then he says, sarvatha pitu. In all cases, doesn't matter how you interpret it. And in this one, I think I pointed this out to you. And this is why I think I really like this Swami Gambhirananda's translations, because he has done a very good job. And one thing I would mention to you, if you were to go into this in more detail, and I hope you do, is to also pay attention to the notes at the bottom, because he has done a marvelous job of providing you more detail if you are interested. That's the sense of the notes. If you feel you have enough, you don't need to go, then you don't have to go to the notes, you can keep on working. But suppose you want to pause, and here the reason I'm saying is that there are some possibilities that people look at it, what do you mean by adhyasa? And so those are detailed very well in these notes given by Swami Gambhiranandaji on page number 2 I'm talking about. So this is such a small one, I'm having difficulty. I should really bring anyway, so number 8, note number 8. So here the main thing was, with regard to this, some say that it consists in the superimposition of the attributes. All of that is given in the details. I won't go into that. So anyway, that is the meaning of kechittu, kechittu. Some say this, some say that. But he says, sarvatha api, in all cases, however, sarvatha api tu anyasya anya dharma avabhasatam na vyabhichariti. Beautiful summary by Adi Shankara. He says, doesn't matter what you're saying, but the common element in all of them is you take one thing to be another. And that never changes. Now, vyabhicharati means that it is never violated. This principle gets never violated. When what principle? That the essence of adhyasa means that you take one thing to be another. That is the essence of it. So he says, sarvatha apitu Anyasya anya dharma avabhasatam na vyabhicharati. And so he says, tathacha, then he gives an example, tathacha loke anubhavaha. So here, I think this is what we have talked about many times before, that there are three filters that any new information that is given in the Vedantic teaching has to go through. Three filters, three exams. Have you passed this? Yes. Have you passed this? Yes. Have you passed this? Yes. If there is a no in any one of them, then you have not passed. And those are Shruti, Yukti and Anubhava. So means what is being said, Shruti. Yukti means it should make sense to you, and Anubhava means that it should be consistent with your own experience. And so here, the consistency with the experience is pointed out in the last sentence of this paragraph. He says, Tathacha loke anubhavaha. Anubhavaha means an experience. Shuktika hi rajatavat avabhasate. He says it's our common experience that you can mistake silver in place of, so rajatavat avabhasate means it looks like silver in Shuktika. Shuktika is the mother of pearl. And the modern example is the tin foil from cigarette, where the cigarettes are placed in some kind of a box, and they're I don't know why it is some kind of like a silvery surface, and you can take that out once you've nowadays we have not even seen cigarettes in once in a while. If you see somebody smoking, you say, oh my gosh, this guy is still smoking. So at least in California we just don't see smoking very much at all. And anyway, in those days when people used to smoke, they would throw away the box, and inside the box was this tin foil that was very shiny. So if somebody were to walk on the beach and you saw this shiny silver-like thing, you might say, oh my God, there's a silver coin there. This is adhyasa. So that's what he's saying. Tathacha loke anubhavaha shuktika hi rajatavat avabhasate. Or another example he gave was ekas chandraha sadvitiya vaditi. That a single moon, if you have some defect in your eye, it looks like there are two moons there. Anyways, he summarizes it by saying this is the lakshana of adhyasa. Okay, so this we did last time. Now we proceed further. So we go to the third paragraph, and what I will do is I'll keep on going for a while, as much as possible, hopefully the end. If not, then we might have to take some more, and then I will read the sentences from Gambhiranandaji's book. And I suggest to you that if you have got the book, then you also follow along. If you don't want to do it, that's okay too, because we've already done the conceptual thing. So this is really just as a backup. So now we go to the third paragraph, which starts with Katham punaha pratyakatmani avishaye adhyaso vishayastad dharmanam sarvo hi puro avasthitah eva vishaye vishayantaram adhyasyati yushmat pratyaya apetasya cha pratyakatmanah avishayatvam bravishi. Long sentence. Again, one more time. Katham punaha. So Katham punaha is a very interesting expression in Sanskritam. It says, wait a second. That's really the meaning of Katham punaha. how in fact, how is that possible? So he says, okay, you've given me the lakshana of adhyasa, but now let me ask you, fine, that lakshana, how is that possible? So this paragraph that we are going to now cover covers the point which we had done earlier, that the Atma is not something that you take, because what you take should be in front of your eyes, or you should be able to hear it, and therefore you can make a mistake about it, that I thought I saw you, but it must have been somebody else. But you must have seen someone to make a mistake about it. But the Atma you don't see, it is you. So how can you make a mistake about yourself? This is the essence of it, this paragraph. And we've already covered that, and we will revise that conclusion in a minute, but let me read on. Katham punaha pratyakatmani avishaye. So if you want, I can just parse the sentences as I go along sometime, maybe not in all cases. Here, pratyakatmani avishaye means that in your, pratyak means inner, the inner Atma. Inner Atma means what? In fact, the word inner is also not completely accurate, because inner means, compared to East Coast, California is nearer, it's inner. Compared to California, Los Altos Hills is inner. Compared to Los Altos Hills, this room is inner. Compared to this room, I am inner. I am inside of this. Inside of me, there are some thoughts. So there is outer, inner, outer, inner, outer, inner. How far can you go? So he says the inner Atma, me. Inner means, am I enclosed in things? What do you mean by inner? So this is what is called pratyakatmani avishaye. So the fact of the matter is that this is called innermost. The innermost vastu. You can call it thing. Thing means that it is jada. But here this is something very interesting. Innermost means it is chaitanya. It is consciousness. And innermost consciousness means you. And you is another interesting thing to really think about. It's an important thing, not just interesting. That's the wrong use of words. Very important thing. Really, this is one of the key things that we need to really put attention to. The nature of I, and this is why the adhyasa becomes so natural. The making a mistake is so naturally done, very easy to do. Why because mistakes can be, everybody else sees something well, but one person can make a mistake. Here, this is an overall mistake for everyone. This is why it is called adhyasa. The whole thing is nothing but an error. All transactions are erroneous, as we talked about it. And so the question is how? Because of the following thing. I'm just telling you about what my essential reading is from everything and my own experience, what I'm going through also. Right? You have an advantage in the sense that there is someone who is also struggling on the same concept. So maybe a couple of steps ahead of you, I don't know. You may be ahead of me, who knows? But I'm in the same boat. Yeah, this is interesting. If I can digress for a second on this point, then I'll come back to it. I was long time ago, before I met Swami Chinmananji and Swami Dayanandji and so on, and I was working for IBM as an engineer, and I was not even married at that time. I was aspiring to be a tennis player, and I didn't take up playing tennis until I was in my second or third year of college. So I was like 19 or so, somewhere there in Bihar Institute of Technology, Sindri. And we had a tennis court. And that's when I started playing tennis. Now, before that, I used to play a lot of other sports, ping pong, cricket, this, that, or the other. But cricket, but tennis I had never taken up. So I started teaching myself tennis, and there was no instructions and so on. And I found it really hard and challenging. But I persisted. When I came to the US and I was working for IBM, I started really learning it and playing more seriously. And quite frankly, I never got that big. I could never serve that easily. It was always a struggle for me. But I think out of all the things that I've spent practicing, I've spent the most time in learning to play tennis. Very dedicated. I would get up early in the morning in Los Gatos, and this is all before the Vedantic introduction. And I would take a bucket of balls in the local high school and just spend half hours serving, and then also running around and so on and so forth, doing my exercise. Tennis was on my mind. Very frustrating. I could never be that good. I joined a tennis club and I was about a B level. I could never be an A level. Kind of like a high B. Anyway, the reason I'm mentioning all this is this. One day, there was a news report that Rod Laver, who at that time was the god of tennis, like Michael Jordan of basketball, was coming for an exhibition game in San Jose State. I'll never forget that. I immediately got the tickets for it. I said, wow, I don't have to go anywhere to see Rod Laver. He came. So he came, and it was poetry in motion. How effortlessly he hit the ball, how hard he hit the ball, how accurately he hit the tennis ball. I just sat there with my hands on my face like this and admired the whole thing. But here's what I'm saying. This is the reason my example is. I enjoyed his performance, but I did not learn anything from it. Instead, I learned from certain lessons that I took where the instructor was not as good as Rod Laver, because he and I took a couple of some lessons from them. They also made mistakes, but they say, see how I'm making a mistake? That's because I didn't put my racket all the way back. All of those kinds of things they used to say. My point is this: you are better off learning from someone who is also learning to get better. That's my whole point. This is my this is my commercial for you learning it from me, rather than some. This Swami Dayanand used to say that. He says, one time he made a comment on this satsang. I never forget that. He says, I find it so odd that I am teaching the students where I, the teacher, don't see the students' problems, and the students don't see my solution. He says it's a wonder how we communicate. That's not the case with me. You'll be happy to know that I am struggling with the same issues. Perhaps I'm a couple of steps ahead of you, I don't know. But I have the same issues. So, now going back to this is just a long dissertation. Going back to what I was saying earlier, that I think this is a very important thing in my struggles with understanding the reality, which is this. It all has to come back to Pratyakatmani Avishaye. That's the reason I took this detour. In the Pratyakatmani Avishaye, the difficulty we have in understanding ourselves is because my reality is never manifest. And my mind is used to deal with things that are manifest. This is the thing. I am never manifest. I'll never be manifest. And I don't understand that I don't need to be manifest in order to understand myself. I don't need to manifest in the way things are manifest. I remember a meditation in Piercy in 79-80 time frame that Swami Dayananji did. I still recall that meditation so well, and I think he would also talk about it. He says that the nature of our life is that something always happens. So he used to base his teaching on the word happening. So he says that if you really analyze your experiences, there are things that are happening all the time, continuously happening. But he says the Atma never happens. It's not capable of happening. And this is where our difficulty is, because I keep waiting for something to happen. And in fact, this is one of the important things to see, that if I am very peaceful, then I find I am making progress. And I find the peacefulness of my mind so pleasant that I don't go any further. I want to maintain it. And of course I can't. Peacefulness goes into pieces very quickly. Just a phone call, this, that, or the other, something happens, gone. But so the peacefulness also is a happening, because it was not there before and now it is there, so it's a happening. And in fact, this is what one of the pitfalls of learning Vedanta is, and that happened to me also, that for a long time I felt so much better in my life. I felt so much more peaceful that I thought I was done. You're never done. You're never done until you understand that the nature of the Atma is that it doesn't happen. And a peace also is something that happens. So this is another way of saying that we get sidetracked by being experiential in our approach. We want the experience. Atma is not an experience, it is you. And the real understanding would be whether you have pleasant experience or an unpleasant experience, you are still okay with yourself. That is the real knowledge. Because it does not happen. There's no way to manifest itself. This takes a long time to really grasp and accept and understand. Anyway, a long dissertation on that, but so here, this is very briefly mentioned here. Let's go back to the subject at hand. So, katham punaha pratyakatmani avishaye adhyasaha vishayat tat dharmanam sarvo hi puro avastita eva vishaye. He says in all cases, puro avastita means that already there before, you must have had some experience of it, then you can say that this is a mistake. But if it was never a vishaya means a kind of like a, here it doesn't mean a subject, it means a thing. So the word vishaya can be used in different ways. So here vishaya means one which is experienced. But you say yourself that the Atma is never experienced. So how can you make a mistake on something that you never experienced? So that's the meaning of this. Anyway, sarvo hi puro avasthita eva vishaye vishayantaram. That if it is not a vishaya, then how can you say now it is not that vishaya, it is a different vishaya? Not possible. Yushmat pratyayoho apetasya pratyakatmanaha avishayatam bravishi. You are the one who is saying that this is not something. So katham punaha. So here I can read this sentence by Swami, and this was a long explanation from me, but you can also see, I want to make sure that you follow the sentences of Swami Gambhirananda. So this comes in page number 3 under the second paragraph, which says opponent. So here it doesn't have to be an opponent. It could be a doubter. I think it could be either one of them. How again can there be any superimposition of any object or its attribute, dharma or its attributes, on the inmost self that is opposed to the non-self? Now there's a note below that, I won't read it. And is never an object of the senses and mind, for everybody superimposes something else on what is perceived by him in front. And you assert that the self is opposed to the non-self and is not referable objectively by the concept you. Well stated, very well stated. So this is the meaning of this whole paragraph. Katham punaha, ending with that. And then actually I didn't read all of it. So avishayatvam bravishi. Bravishi means you are saying this. This is your words. How can this be true? Because Atma is not a subject in front of you. It's not an object in front of you. Uchyate. Uchyate means listen. Means I tell you now. Na tavat ayam ekantena vishayaha asmat pratyaya vishayatvat aparokshatvat cha pratyakatma prasiddhena cha ayam asti iti niyamaha puro avasthita eva vishaye vishayantaram adhyasitavyamiti apratyakshepihi akashe balaha talamalinaditi sadhyasyanti evam aviruddhaha pratyakatmani api anatma adhyasaha. Beautiful. He says, listen, it is not necessary for the Atma to be an object in front of you, to be involved in this adhyasa. It is already there as a prasiddha vastu. Are you not there? What do you have to prove? Why do you have to prove yourself? How can you say, are you there or not? That's not necessary. Not necessary. You are already there. This is something unique. This is Swayam Siddha, Swayam Bhavati, Swayam Bhu, Swayam Jyoti. It's something unique, already there. You are there. And you cannot really need to prove yourself. You don't need a proof. Everything else needs a proof, but you don't need a proof to be there. And so therefore, it's possible, and he gives an example. He says that just like in the sky, now when you look at the akasha means space. You don't see the space. It's a very beautiful example, really. See, the reality of the space is you don't see space. But yet, you ascribe a color on it and a shape of it also. Look at the blue sky and look how it's shaped like this. So Balaha means children. So here, Swami Gambhirananda, I was looking at this, he translated his boys. So some of his English is kind of interesting. The most interesting word that I see is nescience, which I mentioned last time also. And I'm not sure why he would not use the word ignorance. And so it's interesting. This is something I feel so fortunate having studied under Swami Dayanandji. He was such a stickler of using the exact words, that the use of words should, because he thinks that words define thoughts and thoughts define words, and the two of them have to be very consistent. So you take the word like nescience, and also the word bliss. You take these two words. Let's take nescience. Nescience means ignorance, pure and simple. Ignorance which is very common. Like, for example, you can say, did you know that Kamala Harris was in our town yesterday? She visited our town yesterday on a trip. And you can say, no, I didn't know that. Or you can say, I knew that. So when you say, I didn't know that, it's a very simple ignorance of the fact that Kamala Harris was in our town yesterday for some fundraising. I didn't know that. You can, your spouse can say, do you know that she came to such and such house on that street? That used to happen when Trump would come. When Mr. Trump would come, there were some very conservatively oriented people who were all towards raising money for him. And every now and then we would see so many police cars and this, that, or the other. Anyway, that's a separate thing. So you didn't know that. This is called ignorance. So there is no reason to use a word which has some strange sounding names, nescience. Now maybe in those days, whenever Swami Gambhirananda was there was no such word as ignorance. I don't believe that. Knowledge and ignorance have been there for. So there's no need to, the problem in using the word nescience is somehow it creates the feeling that this is not just simple ignorance, it is some very powerful ignorance. There is no powerful ignorance. It's either ignorance or knowledge, that's it. What it is ignorant of is different, but the concept itself is very simple. Same thing with the word bliss. Highly overused. Highly overused. Because the word bliss means joy. There's only one joy. It's not There are shades of joy, yes. Like for example, there is relief. Like you go to a doctor and you think you have cancer and the doctor says, it's just a black spot on your skin. It's not a cancer. Relief. Or you're taken a test and you pass. There's joy in it. So there are some small shades of, but it's all the same ananda. So the word bliss means, oh my God, there must be something special. And this is how these teachers sometimes keep their flock in. Have you experienced bliss yet? Hey, every night we have ananda. It is the same thing. There's nothing, bliss is, the whole problem is that my ananda is circumscribed because it only happens for a short time. It's like a room space. I think the space is enclosed within the room. It is not enclosed within the room, but it's the same space. It should be just joy. But the word bliss is used in order to sort of create a false impression that there is something greater, and you guys please follow me and give me a lot of money if you want to really obtain bliss. So I have some questions regarding the use of words nescience. And here he uses the word boys for bala. Bala means children. It should be both girls and boys. Anyway, other than that, I'm sorry, but I think his translation is very good. He's very, I really like it. Okay, so I think we are done with the third paragraph. Apratyakshepi, I just want to double clarify. Apratyakshepi hi akashe. Look at this, it's a beautiful thing. He says, Akasha is not a pratyak vishaya. Is it? Do you see the akasha? Do you see space? You don't see space. And yet, you can say, wow, look at the blue sky. That means the sky has become blue. Hey, it's interesting that Ishvara is very methodical. I think methodical means there is order in the creation. So as we talked about the other day, I think in this class, that when a baby is born, then the baby cries when it is hungry or it is wet. So this is what is called the order of life. And so if you touch a hot plate, you immediately take it off. It's called order of life. How disorder would be, randomness would be, if a baby is born and it is hungry, it starts laughing. Or if it is diaper needs changing, it just doesn't tell you. And similarly, if there is a hot plate, and sometimes the hot plate seems very pleasant, you can put your hand in there. It's 200 degrees. Your hand will become papad. Doesn't happen. So there is order in the whole creation. And so really speaking here, there is order in the fact that anything which is infinite has a color blue. even though it is not seen, but the indication of seeing infinity is blueness. Beautiful order of Ishvara. So water also, when you have a little bit of water, it is not blue. But when you have lots of water, it becomes blue, ocean water. And so therefore, you say, wow, look at the blue color. Akasha cannot be blue. It is colorless. But you put color on it. So this happens in our Anubhava. That's what he's saying. Or you can say, Tala malinatadi. Tala malinatadi. So malina means dirty. It means, wow, so much pollution. That pollution is it's in the air, not in the sky. But you put an adhyasa on the sky, on the akasha. So anyway, so that is the end of the third paragraph. I'm going to go a little bit more. So let's see how far we go. Then go to the next paragraph. Tam etam evam lakshana adhyasam panditaha avidya iti manyante. So here he says that panditaha means those who know. Those who know. Like, the physicists feel that there is complete transference between mass and energy. So the physicists mean those who understand the reality of it. Pandita. So tam etam evam lakshanam adhyasam panditaha avidya iti manyante. So he's saying, listen, this adhyasa is really spoken to be just ignorance, avidya. And in here Swami Gambhirananda also explains it very well, that the adhyasa is a result of ignorance. In fact, let's see, he uses the word. Interesting, he uses the word. This is on the bottom of the page 3. He says, this superimposition that is of this nature is considered by the learned Pandita to be avidya nescience. So he uses the word nescience there. Tad vivekena cha vastu swarupa avadharanam vidyam ahuhu. So he says that if you remove the adhyasa, superimposition, through viveka, then it is called vidya. So this is an interesting point, an important point. So here Adi Shankara is equating adhyasa to avidya and viveka to vidya. So follow this for a second, right? So as I gave the example, did you know that Kamala Harris was in town last night? No, I didn't know that. This is called avidya. And the vidya is, let me show you a clip from the television news which showed where she was. And so you can go back to the section and look at that television news, and now you know. Or you can look at the newspaper next morning, and yes, it describes she came here for some fundraising. Now you know. This is called vidya. You see? So there is a happening of an event that you didn't know, which is avidya, and then you know, which is vidya. This is the difference between vidya and avidya. Here, however, it is not like that. There is no happening that is avidya or happening which is vidya. What it is aviveka. And so aviveka means that there is some mix-up. You see, it is not somebody visiting or not visiting, but it is a mix-up of two things. This is what viveka is all about. This is what our main issue is. And this is an important issue that we must keep in mind. So this is the adhyasa. Adhyasa means it's an aviveka. And aviveka means that I am taking myself to be an experiencer, to be myself. As a karta, bhokta, pramata, this is me. I am looking at it, things, this is me. What I fail to understand is that I am the conscious entity which consciousness is being borrowed by my body-mind complex to assume the identity of an experiencer. Much like in like of a dream, where I am a conscious entity whose identity is being borrowed by the dreamer and becomes a dreamer. And so similarly, in this waking state, I am the consciousness, unchanging, unborn, immortal consciousness, which is being reflected in my body-mind complex. And I am able to not distinguish between them yet. So this is called aviveka. This is the adhyasa. So it is not like, did I know somebody came or did not know somebody came? It's not like that. But it creates the same thing. Aviveka creates the same issue. That I think I am the real one, moving around this. I'm not the real one. I think I'm born, and I'm changeable, and I'm limited, and I'm a samsari. This appears to be the reality of myself. It's not the reality. Why not? Because I fail to understand there is a unmanifest reality which is constant underneath, which I'm there all the time. So this is the point. This is a very beautiful point. He says, tam etam evam lakshanam adhyasam panditaha avidya iti manyante tad vivekena cha vastu swarupa avadharam vidyam ahuhu. He says, but if that being the case, then what happens is tatra evam sati. That being the case, that what being the case, that the lack of viveka causes an adhyasa. Yatra yat adhyasaha tat kritena doshena gunena va anumatrena apina sambadhyate. He says, because of that, then you take on all the qualities of the other thing. So here, the qualities of the body-mind Leave aside the rest of the world. Forget about that. You look at your own self. It's a perfect example of your adhyasa. Why? Because you've got guna and dosha. So he looks at both guna and dosha. So guna is that fact that you are someone to have a personality. You have a personality. This is a guna. Dosha is that the same personality is highly limited, changing, creates problems. So you have guna and you have dosha of being a human being. You're not a human being. You're something higher than that, something better than that. So, but in the aviveka, you accept the characteristics of humanness onto yourself, which is the Atma. This is exactly what happens. Then, one more sentence we'll do and then we'll stop. Tam etam avidya akhyam atma anatmanoho itera adhyasam puraskritya sarve pramana prameya vyavaharaha laukikaha pravittaha sarvani cha shastrani vidhi pratishedam moksha parani. So he says, now this is exactly what is happening in our lives, that you mistake one for the other, and now you go to business with in your life, and you now have sukha dukkha. Now you fail to see that this is a play, and so therefore you are now engaged in all the details of the play. This is what happens. It was a beautiful example of this. Swami Maheshananji had pointed this out. Now I'll close the class with this. And I've given you this example before, so it may sound like a repetition. So there was a casting for a movie, and so there was a storyline where a robbery was committed by someone who had a getaway car, and he sped away very quickly. And the movie script called for the fact that there was a policeman who was told about this robber getting into the car and speeding away, and the policeman was supposed to drop everything and start the chase. And the chase is very difficult. This is what was pointed out. How this is in between the traffic, you have to really drive at 100 miles per hour, and the person was moving, and you now finally have to sort of go with him. And eventually the script says that the person was so fast and so clever that the policeman could not catch up with him, and he escaped. This is the script. Okay? So a person was interviewed for the policeman's job, and so he was asked, do you know how to drive a car? Good. Are you a good driver, fast driver? He said, yes, I'm a very fast driver. Can you weave in and out of the traffic? Yes, I can weave in and out of the traffic. And they did some tests and so on, and he says, good, you're the right person, you got the job. So then the shooting starts, and so this whole thing happens in real streets, because obviously you have to have simulate all the traffic and so on. Shooting starts. So this guy sped up to a point, 60, 70, maybe 75, 80 or something. Then he says, this is getting dangerous. I'm not sure that that I should do this. And then he remembered that the script called for the fact that the robber actually escaped me and I cannot catch up with it. So he thought, why don't I do this? I don't have to reach 100 miles per hour. I can reach up to 80 and then I can give it up. I can give up. So what's the big deal? It's just a movie. There is no... The script itself calls for the fact that I can never catch up with it, so I might as well not even... I just gave up. And then there was some car with the cameras and so on, and they say, what's he doing? He's slowing down. The real action is yet to come. And he's just... So they stopped and they interviewed him and said, wait a second. Weren't you supposed to catch up to him up to 100 miles per hour? He says, I know. But you told me the script was that I'll never be able to catch up with it. And then I said, what is the big use? Let's just pretend it. It doesn't make any difference at all. They said, oh my God. Did we make a mistake about it? What are you talking about? You spoiled the whole movie. You have to take the whole thing all over again and get somebody else to do it. And so, what is the moral of this story? Why are we saying this? It just means that for a person to not know the difference between what is movie and what is reality, then you mistake one for the other. You don't do your job very well because you think it's a big problem. Life is a big problem. You don't really fulfill the movie script. So the movie script is that you have to really fulfill, and yet you are self-fulfilled. And so, like for example, in a movie, if there is a very good actor, then the actor knows I am very well paid, I'm rich, and I do a good job. You don't mind fulfilling the exact script of the movie. So anyway, so what he says is that really not knowing that this is, people go into their lives and make a mess of it. And so we'll continue to do this. I think what I'm going to do next time, there's a couple of more kind of difficult sentences to come with some important clarification on this script and movie and adhyasa and so on. So I'm going to do some of that, but I may not complete all the way up to the end. I don't know. I'll see. So in any case, I am committed to end the Adhyasa Bhashya next week and start on the first sutra of Brahma Sutra. So I may take the full class, but most likely I will probably not take a full class and then move on to the first sutra. So that's what the plan is. So with that, let us close the class with the last 5 verses of Dakshinamurti Stotram, and then I'll open up for any questions. ॐ राहुग्रस्त दिवांकरेन्दु सदृशो माया समाच्छादनात् सन्मात्रः करणोपसंहरणतो यो भूत् सुषुप्तः पुमान् प्रागस्वाप्समिति प्रबोधसमये यः पत्यभिज्ञायते तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये बाल्यादिषु अपि जाग्रदादिषु तथा सर्वास्वस्थास्वपि व्यावृत्तास्वनुवर्तमानमहमित्यन्तःस्फुरन्तं सदा स्वात्मानं प्रकटीकरोति भजतां यो मुद्रया भद्रया तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये विश्वं पश्यति कार्यकारणतया स्वस्वामिसम्बन्धतः शिष्याचार्यतया तथैव पुत्राद्यात्मना भेदतः स्वप्ने जाग्रति वा य एष पुरुषो माया परिभ्रामितः तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये भूरम्भांस्य नलो नीलोऽम्बर्महर्णार्थो हिमांशुः पुमान् इत्याभाति चराचरात्मकमिदं यस्यैव मूर्त्यष्टकम् नान्यत्किञ्चन विद्यते विमृशतां यस्मात् परस्मात् विभोः तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये सर्वात्मत्वमिति स्फुटीकृतमिदं यस्मात्तमुष्मिंस्तवे तेनास्य श्रवणात् तदर्थमननात् ध्यानात् च संकीर्तनात् सर्वात्मत्वमहाविभूतिसहितं स्यादीश्वरत्वं स्वतः सिद्ध्येतत् पुनरष्टधा परिणतं चैश्वर्यमव्याहतम् अशुभानि निराचष्टे तनोति शुभसन्ततिं स्मृतिमात्रेण यत्पुंसां ब्रह्म तन्मङ्गलं परम् अतिकल्याणरूपत्वात् नित्यकल्याणसंश्रयात् स्मर्तॄणां वरदत्वात् च ब्रह्म तन्मङ्गलं विदुः ओङ्कारश्चाथ शब्दश्च द्वावेतौ ब्रह्मणः पुरा कण्ठं भित्त्वा विनिर्यातौ तस्मान्माङ्गलिकौ बुभौ ओमथ 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 Wonderful to see you all. Very good. So Kirsten had a question. In life, how can we see what our right role is and in which play? There seems to be always more than one possibility that life presents us. Yeah, good question. Not always easy to see, Kirsten, but I think that the best way to negotiate what is the right role for us is to distinguish between. There's several ways to. This is a topic that requires quite a bit of treatment. There's several ways to look at it. One possibility, which is very helpful to me as well, is an understanding of prarabdha karma. So prarabdha karma, if we can sit back, because there is no next class, we can spend a little more time answering all of this. So it'd be good that you ask this. So this prarabdha karma is a very important thing that really has a lot of lessons for us, as I've learned in my life. Prarabdha karma is not just, just something that's already started and so on. There's more to it. What it should mean to us is that I have been put into a particular situation after a lot of mutual thoughts between my previous life, my desires, and Ishvara agreeing with the right combination of things to give me this present birth. This is what it comes down to. So really speaking, our life is a continuity, as you know. There is not that much of a discontinuity between one life or the other. It just is a kind of like a flow. And that flow determines what the next part of the life will be. Preferably there will be no next life, because if you can figure out the whole thing, then you're done. But supposing you are not done, then there is a certain continuity of your present situation on to the next one. And so that is a complex process where you are communicating your desires to Ishvara through what you do and how you do things, what your attitude is, what your capability is, what your desires are, all complex things. And so based on that, there is a determination. So not only what you do in this life, but you have done a lot of things in the past life that have not been fully accounted for yet. And so Ishvara as a karma phala data, as a perfect computer, has to, and the computer sounds kind of like inert, but this is a very thoughtful person who takes into account all of your previous things and your present things to determine what you're going to be in your next life. So now let's look at this life. So at this life, I am what I am based on lots of inputs and so on. Okay? Now, when my life starts, there is a certain consequence of things that will last me through this life. Consequence meanings my health, how long I'm going to live, my gender, whether I'm a male or a female, my family, all those kinds of things. We can go on, but really basically it all determines exactly what my mind is, what my social situation is. All of those are
are determined, predetermined now. You cannot change, you can make some small changes here and there, but really speaking, your life, your genes, and so on and so forth for this life are predetermined. Now you can, through your prayers and aspirations, you can make some changes next life, but for this life, this is very obvious, nothing. So what now happens is, that creates a script for me. That creates a script for me. Script meaning that certain things are going to happen to me. And so what that would mean is whether I get married or not, whether I have children or not, what kind of profession I do. So that flow will always take place and things are going to happen to me. That becomes the script. So if I have children, for example, and I neglect them, I'm going against the script. If I am married and I'm not sincere to my spouse, I'm going outside the script. All those kinds of things are going to happen. So this is a choice that life has given me, and it is not that difficult to figure out exactly what am I supposed to do. Okay, so let me go on. I'm not done yet. This is just one part of it. Now, before you understood what the structure of the Vidya is, what is knowledge, what is not knowledge, what is spirituality, and so on, then you do the best you can. And even doesn't matter that you know Vedanta or not, you lead a purposeful, structured life which will lead to your own happiness either now or even later. That happens. But if you were to introduce to Vedanta, if you and I are fortunate enough to get an introduction to that, then life should change a lot. A lot. How? It should change between prarabdha karma and all the things that I should be doing based on the script of where I am, what I'm supposed to do, and kamya karma, where I have some desire prompted actions that really don't contribute to my longevity. Longevity means my immortality, not longevity, my immortality. So what that means is, I should be able to distinguish between prarabdha karma and kamya karma. Or you can say prarabdha karma and non-prarabdha karma. This is one good way to look at it. What's already ordained, and what I am now creating for myself. Simple example. Swami Maheshananji gives such a wonderful example. It's just great. He says, and this has happened to him so many times. So apparently he was teaching in Calcutta. He is from Marwar. He's a Marwari, and a lot of Marwaris are in Calcutta within the Bengal. And so when he was in Calcutta, Calcutta is well known for rasagullas. The best sweets in the whole world are from Bengal, especially rasagulla, which is a very difficult thing to make perfect. And so he was very fond. He started to eat, his disciples would give him rasagullas and he would enjoy it. Then he came back to Mount Abu, where his base was, away from Bengal. And every once in a while, some disciple will bring rasagullas for him. And you have to keep it cool, otherwise it spoils. And so in India, in the hot country, the transportation becomes a problem. But he says once in a while, my disciples would bring me some rasagullas that Swamiji used to like it and I just brought it for you. So he says, now look at this action. Here is some prarabdha karma and non-prarabdha karma. What is the prarabdha karma? He says the disciples will bring rasagullas for him and he says, no, I am now a Swami. I am not supposed to be. I am beyond the joy of eating rasagullas. You can substitute mangoes for it, for example. Alfonso mangoes. I cannot eat this and so on and so forth. This is one thing. No, you should enjoy it. The person has brought it for you. It will be an insult to him if you don't enjoy it. But suppose, and this is the distinction between prarabdha karma and non-prarabdha karma. Suppose you were to tell the person, can you send me some more? Now we have a problem. Can you, when next time you come, do you have anybody else who can come? I love rasgullas. I would like to have some more. Swamiji says, there is something wrong with this Swami. So prarabdha karma means whatever happens to you, enjoy it and fulfill it. But don't create new conditions that are contrary to what your understanding is. In fact, your life should be nothing but to fulfill what is already done to you. And the rest of the time, you just clarify it in your own mind and you become a jnani. So there are various ways, Kirsten, to distinguish between what is to be done, what is not to be done. But I would summarize, if certain responsibilities and roles and actions have come your way from the past, I'm oversimplifying it a little bit. It's not as though this covers everything. But if you can distinguish what you are needed to be done, what your responsibilities are, and what you are creating all by yourself, then those are the right roles and the other ones are wrong roles. Would be one way to look at it. All right, gosh, it's 9:45 already. You're probably thinking, why so late? Anyway, I took the advantage of not having the second class. So nice to have you all. Have a wonderful week. Hopefully we'll see you next week. Om.